You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast, season 3, episode 102, the return of Sammy Sosa. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and most importantly, subscribe to the podcast, follow on the socials, Fly the W670, Twitter, Instagram. Of course, we're on Facebook, or email us at flythew670@gmail.com. So, Crawly, a Christmas present, right? Sammy Sosa is returning, open arms with the Cubs. Didn't see that coming.
The prodigal son returns. I kind of saw it coming, Dustin, and we're going to kind of walk our listeners a little bit through how all of this kind of happened. But it's been funny because I keep getting ads on Twitter feeds, Facebook feeds, all this stuff. Come to CubsCon, buy your CubsCon tickets. It was very clear. CubsCon is not the hot ticket that it once was. It used to just sell out instantaneously. And now it really doesn't do that as much. And so I was sure that maybe Cub fans would be more interested now that they made the trade for Kyle Tucker. But like you said, Thursday afternoon, Sammy Sosa shocked us all. He has a press release that says the following. And Dustin, I was listening on the Score a little bit earlier when that all came out to Dan Bernstein, and it was just kind of phenomenal. I couldn't believe it. I had to do a double take. Here's what Sosa had to say, and we got to be clear on the wording here. December 19th, 2024. I left it all on the field for the Cubs and Cub fans because I wanted to win and make the fans happy. I love to see the fans at Wrigley in the right field bleachers every home game. I understand why some players in my era don't always get the recognition that our stats deserve. There were times I did whatever I could to recover from injuries in an effort to keep my strength up to perform over 162 games. I never broke any laws, but in hindsight, I made mistakes and I apologize. We accomplished great things as a team, and I worked extremely hard in the batting cage to become a great hitter. Cub fans are in the best of the world, and I hope that fans, the Cubs, and I can all come together again and move forward. We can't change the past, but the future is bright. In my heart, I've always been a Cub, and I can't wait to see Cub fans again. Sincerely, Sammy Sosa. What do you take from that?
Apologize. The word apologize. And still pushing back a little bit at the same time. I didn't break any laws. I didn't break any rules. I did everything I could to make sure I got out there for 162 games every year. That's my takeaway.
Right. When you look at it, he said there were times I did whenever I could to recover from injuries, and he didn't do anything illegal. So again, it wasn't against the rules of baseball to take steroids, as ridiculous as it sounds. In that time period, he didn't break any rules. And so he says he didn't break any laws. Now, that's a question. Obviously, American laws, Dominican laws, those are different, right?
Right. Probably I've been banging the drum for quite a while that I wanted this to happen. I mean, it was one of the things I just did not understand, that the Ricketts family had, planted their flag in the ground, if you will, and said, we're not moving. And, it's just something that needed to happen.
Right. And luckily Ricketts responded right away with his own release. He said, "We appreciate Sammy releasing his statement and for reaching out. No one plays harder or wanted to win more. Nobody's perfect, but we never doubted his passion for the game and the Cubs. It is an understatement to say that Sammy is a fan favorite. We plan on inviting him to 2025 Cubs convention. And while it's short notice, we hope that he can attend. We are all ready to move forward together." So that, Dustin, is an invite.
Right. Move forward together. And that's nice, right? That's the idea. Move forward together. I love it.
And just like that, Dustin, a 15-year stalemate is over. Hell finally froze over, and Sammy's welcome back to the convention. Dustin, we all know the story of Tom Ricketts falling in love with the Cubs at the bleachers, meeting his wife out there. That era when Tom was out in the bleachers, that was the Sammy era. Okay. And one of the first things that I remember the Ricketts being asked, so the Ricketts bought the team in 2009. They come to Cubs convention and they set up this Rickett family forum. And for people like me, I've been going to Cubs cons for 25 years. That was kind of a cool thing because when the Tribune was around, it was kind of this faceless corporation. You couldn't really ask anybody questions because no one really knew who was in charge. And so Ricketts is there and we're all like, all right, Ricketts was in the bleachers. Sammy, when's he coming back? And that's what you're talking about there with planting the flag. It was kind of like, no, we expect an apology, okay, before there's any reunion. And so that was, what did he want Sammy to apologize for? There's cork bat, 2003, walked out his teammates in 2004. There was the teammates irritating him with the boombox, but was it all PEDs? I don't know. And so there's an apology, and apparently that was enough for Mr. Ricketts.
Hey, and if it's good enough for, listen, it's good. Let's move forward, right? It's time to move forward, and that's great. And here's some things I'm curious about. Will it be a Sammy by himself type of thing? Is he going to get up on stage with other players from that era, other players from farther down the line? Okay, the Ricketts are welcoming him back. Are the former Cub teammates and former Cubs in general going to welcome Sammy back?
Well, here's the way it usually works is when you go to Cubs convention, the first time you see the players, they're called out. They call out all the players and they start with all sorts of different years. And then they do the Cubs Hall of Famers, and then they do the Hall of Famers is usually how it goes. Now, Sammy doesn't, fit into the any kind of Hall of Fame category. But now that you're kind of looking at this, you got to say to yourself, okay, a lot of this started and a lot of these seeds were planted a little while ago, right? And so if you remember, I went to a book signing with Bruce Miles. Bruce Miles has a great book, and he had a book signing, and that was the first time that he had mentioned that Sammy Sosa was on the ballot for the Cubs Hall of Fame. And at that, that was huge, and that blew up. That tweet went viral for me, and it really blew up this idea that there is a pathway for Sammy to come back without any apologies, right? If he would have been elected into the Cubs Hall of Fame, he wouldn't have had to apologize. And Tom Ricketts could have washed his hands and said, well, I didn't welcome him back. He was voted in. Tom Ricketts apparently has nothing to do with the Hall of Fame voting. And obviously your partner in the morning, David Haw, has a vote on that. So we know about it. So that to me was kind of the start of how this all starts to play out. And then so that was 2023. And then in March in 2024, Sammy announces that he is coming back to the Chicago Sports Spectacular. The first time he was coming back to Chicago in 17 years, Dustin. Does that just seem unbelievable to you?
Yeah, that's crazy.
And so he came that weekend, and I was not there. I was actually in spring training, but my friends were all there, and they kind of put together this whole pathway for Sosa when he came back. He went to the Shriners Hospital and visited with kids. He did a sit-down interview with Jared Payton. If people know, Sammy and Walter had a close relationship. They talked a lot. And so they have a special bond. And so he was at the Sports Spectacular for 3 days signing autographs, and the crowds were huge. And everyone was just so excited to see Sammy back. And then in July, he comes back again, this time to Cleveland for the National Show, which is the biggest autograph show in the country.
Yep.
Yeah, that happens in the summer. And so that was big. And then obviously this is special for me, but my friend Stuart McVicker and the Club 400 charity, finally we were able to get Sammy out to Club 400. Sammy came, he donated $10,000 to the Chicago PD, the Chicago Fire Department. And the cool thing, Dustin, is that I actually got to spend a lot of time with Sammy that night. My job that night was to kind of make sure everything got autographed, auction items. And this is a giant, if you're on 670 The Score, this is a picture of a giant bat that we were auctioning off. And we had all sorts of really cool items. And so getting to kind of hang out with Sammy, I'd never obviously hung out with him before. It was a very surreal experience. He was so nice. I've seen a lot of guys come into the Club 400, and it's a little bit of like, you're trying to get the business done and everything. He was truly happy to be back in his element, to be around the Cubs fans.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We sang him a song, my friend Danny Rocket and I, to the tune of Lola, except it was Sosa, Lola by the Kinks. And so it was just one of those moments where you got to see Sammy. And I'm not a guy, I've been around plenty of players, right? It doesn't really kind of rattle me that much. But I mean, Sammy Sosa to me was like a unicorn. Like it was the one guy you didn't know if you'd ever see again, right? Like, 17 years since he was in Chicago. And so he was just such a great guy that night. And so.
And you think that played a role in this also? Like,
I think
that it helped. It helped. Maybe this is part of why Sammy was willing to apologize. The great, weekend he had back here in town.
I think all of it kind of, whether you're talking about the Cubs Hall of Fame, the appearances at the Sports Spectacular, coming to Club 400, I think he really truly realized now how much he missed kind of being a part of it all. And if you think about it, Dustin, I guess my question is, did the punishment really fit the crime? Right? What was Sammy's crime? Because if I think about it, San Francisco retired Barry Bonds' number. It's retired. No one else can wear that number in San Francisco. For the Cubs, those are the people you're talking about: Maddox, Ernie Banks, Billy Williams. Think about the great guys that have had their numbers retired. Well, that's Barry Bonds in San Fran. Mark McGwire, he's in the Cardinals Hall of Fame. Alex Rodriguez, he's on every MLB broadcast. When Sammy's name came up, it was on the report that was talking about the urine test that were supposed to be unanimous or anonymous. And David Ortiz's name was on that same list as Sammy's. Why is he in the Hall of Fame and so beloved? But it seems to me like Sammy Sosa's been an outcast. Let's talk about Cubs Con. Carlos Zambrano's been back and cheered. He punched out a teammate. He punched Michael Barrett in the face and had to send him to the hospital. He got in a fist fight with Derek Lee. He literally left the team and quit on the team in the middle of a season, not at the end of the year at the last game and he walked out. He quit like in the middle of the season and retired.
Right.
So explain to me why there always seems to be a different set of rules for Sammy than everybody else. That's
well,
what
I can tell you. I could tell you what I think if you want to know, and even if you don't want to know, I'm going to tell you anyway.
Tell me.
That's just how I am. I think it's Kerry Wood. I think Kerry Wood has always had the Ricketts ear since the time they bought the team, and I think Kerry Wood has had it out for Sammy Sosa. Doesn't like him, and I think Kerry Wood let the Ricketts know that. I'm very curious to see if there is any interaction between Kerry and Sammy at the Cubs Con.
The other one that people they bring up Kerry Wood a lot. He is the prime suspect for the demolition of Sammy's boombox that last day of the season. Someone broke Sammy's boombox with a bat, and nobody's ever known who it was, but Wood is definitely one of the top suspects. But the other one that you really kind of think about in this one here is, did Ryan Sandberg have the Ricketts ear? Obviously, Barry Rosner was a longtime guy on the Score, and he wrote Sandberg's speech, worked with Sandberg on the Hall of Fame speech. And that Hall of Fame speech, a lot of people saw that as a direct
he went
shot
out of the way. Yeah, he went out of the way to take that shot. That's why I'm saying I think it'll be very interesting to see if Sammy has to do his own thing, or if he will do stuff with former teammates and of that era. But I think the biggest one is Kerry Wood.
Yeah, and that'll be interesting. But I think, Dustin, when you look at this, there was a time where in the 90s, the Cubs just had an awful decade of the 90s. The whole 90s just sucked. And the only reason you went to Wrigley Field was to see Sammy Sosa hit a ball on Ken Moore. And so for a lot of people that generation, I fell in love with the 84 team, but I was a teenager in the 90s. I graduated in 94. Sammy came in 93. I graduated high school in 94. And so, going to Wrigley by myself, some of those first times when you go with your friends and you go down there, that's what you went to see. You probably weren't going to see the Cubs win in the 90s, but you did have a really good chance of seeing Sammy Sosa hit a home run. So there is this whole, if you go to Cubs Con, it's oh, here's the 60s team, here's the 69 team, here's the 84 team. But then all of a sudden there was and then now it's the 2016 team, but there was never really an acknowledgement of the teams that Sosa was really on, And so when I go there, I wasn't alive in the 60s. I was a young kid in 84.
Are you sure you weren't alive in the 60s, Craig?
Yeah, right. But, and then obviously 2016 was great. But there's a whole generation of fans that grew up on watching Sammy Sosa slug the baseball. And Dustin, there's so many great moments if you think about Sammy Sosa throughout history. And I'd be curious to know which one's your favorite. But, you got that 30-30 club he did in 1993 and 1995. Back then, that was really, there were very few people that were in that club. And there's still not that many nowadays, right?
Right.
Sammy has to be acknowledged in the history of the Cubs and the history of baseball for the 1998 home run chase, right? The Roger Maris home run chase and the way that Sammy and Mark McGwire electrified baseball. People forget.
You could not miss an at-bat.
No.
It was must-see TV. They used to break into the game of the week, right, on the crawl on ESPN. If they didn't have the game on, they were telling you that these guys were coming up to bat. They would break into games. They'd split the screen. It was fantastic.
Dustin, baseball was dying after that strike, after the 94 strike. Nobody wanted to go. Nobody cared. Everyone was really upset about that. And those two guys are the ones that really got people interested. Not only that, he wins the MVP. The Cubs make it to the postseason for the first time in 89. All of this, kind of was in the shadow of Harry Carey and Jack Brickhouse passing away. It was just such a weird, you had Kerry Wood's 20 strikeout game. It's such a magical season. And then Dustin, another moment that I kind of think a lot about was, and I have this on my memorabilia wall, it's one of my favorite pieces, is that 9/11 happens and baseball is gone, right? There's no baseball. And that was the weirdest thing. I had tickets. I think I ended up going to the last game of the season that year, but it wasn't supposed to be the last game of the season. They stopped having baseball for a couple of weeks. And when they resumed baseball, Sammy Sosa runs out to right field with the American flag. And there's a great story. And these are the type of stories I hope to hear at CubsCon. That's why you like going to CubsCon. You get to hear the kind of the behind the scenes story. The way the story goes is that Billy Williams was the first base coach at the time. And Sammy Sosa and him talked and said, hey, if you hit a home run, Billy's going to have a little tiny flag in the pocket, American flag. And Sosa hits it, but it's not one of the bombs. It's a close one. I think it was it might have been a basket shot. And so Billy's kind of hesitant to get the flag out in case it's like a double or something, you know what I mean, off the wall. But Sosa talk about living up to that moment of healing the nation and just how great that felt. It's just one of the most amazing, vivid memories I have of Wrigley Field growing up. Dustin, what about that home run derby in 2002 in Milwaukee?
Pretty special, yeah.
I mean, the guy literally is just balls
crushing,
you have not seen. Yeah.
Crushing balls.
Just
and you know what? And even in somebody will push back. Well, was he using one of those cork bats? So what? Entertain me, okay? I'm not saying he was. I'm not saying he wasn't. But that's the first. The anti-Sammy crowd would be, oh, he must have been using one of them cork bats. He's a cheater. Cheater.
The funny thing, Dustin, when it comes down to this, is that when you talk about the steroid era and all that stuff, I'm not saying every player did it and that makes it okay, but understand that there was a lot of players taking amphetamines in the 60s. You want to go down that list? Speaking of Cubs convention, it was always really funny to see when Ron Santo used to be with his old roommate, Glenn Becker, right? Becker was the second baseman. Ronnie was the third baseman. And Ron Santo was diabetic, as we all know. And what Glenn Becker did is he tells this amazing story about, no one on the team knew that Santo was diabetic. Santo was afraid that if people said, if people found out he was diabetic, he'd get cut from the team. You didn't have the union protection that you do now. And so Beckert says, hey, Rumi, I'm going to go grab a drink. I'll be right out. I'll meet you later on. And so Beckert leaves and he realizes he forgot his wallet. And so Santo's in the bathroom and Beckert comes in. He doesn't see Santo anywhere. He opens the bathroom door and Santo's injecting himself with insulin. And Beckert tells the way that Beckert would tell the story is he's like, I'm sitting there and Santo's hitting 273. I'm hitting 220. And I said, hey, Rumi, what are you taking? Give me some of that. And so think about that mentality, though, there is that I think it was Bob Gibson of the Cardinals who said if he was around in the steroid era, he probably would have taken him because of that desire to win, the desire to get paid. A lot of these, Sammy included, came from, abject poverty that people in this country would never understand. How poor. When you're talking about third world country poor, it's a different kind of poor. So to me, I just sit there and I think about what Sammy meant to the fan base, what Sammy meant to the team. Do I wish PEDs were never involved? Yeah, but where was baseball to police any of it, to care about any of it, right? As long as everybody was making money and that cash register was going, they were happy to have everybody back. And then when they no longer
were.
And when they no longer needed him, they tossed him aside like a piece of garbage. I just don't think that's right. If you don't like Sammy, fine, whatever. But I'm just telling you, I wouldn't be surprised if there's even plenty of players today that use PEDs that just haven't gotten caught. And one day we're going to take a look at it and be like, oh my God, like fast acting testosterone, stuff like that. Unfortunately, the drug users are always ahead of the drug testers. It's just how it goes. I'm just telling you what I saw as a fan. And the one moment I'll never forget, I was there, was in 2003. NLCS game 1 versus the Marlins. Cubs down by 2 runs. Sammy Sosa hits a 2-run home run to tie the game. The Cubs unfortunately lost the game, but that was, I've been at Wrigley when it has shaken, and that was one of those moments where the entire ballpark was shaken when he tied it up.
It's so cool.
I think it's time to welcome Sammy back. I think it's past time, to be honest with you. And I think if people were on the fence about going to Cubs convention, I don't think they're on the fence anymore.
No, that's going to be must-see TV, must-see in person. I mean, luckily, Marquee will carry it, right? If you can't get out there, you'll be out there. So I guess Friday night will be the first glimpse of all this, yes?
Yeah, Friday night should be the first night that we get to see it. So opening ceremonies, our guy Cole Wright will be the one that'll be announcing the names, and I know he's freaking out right now. I already kind of talked to him, and so it is exciting, and I don't think his teammates are going to really give a hard time to him, to be honest with you.
All right, good. That's what I like to hear, Crawly. That's good news. And again, I'm happy that Tom Ricketts is saying it's time for everybody to just move forward, bury the hatchet, and move along. This is the Fly the W670 podcast, episode 102 of season number 3, the return of Sammy Sosa. Merry Christmas, all you Cub fans. Don't forget to listen, download, review. Hey, leave us a 5-star review. And you can email us, flythew670@gmail.com. On the last episode, we played some audio from Jed's press conference that related to the trade of Cody Bellinger and Kyle Tucker. But he also talked about the state of the Cubs team in general. One concern the Cub fans have is where the team plans to do about Seiya Suzuki and his unhappiness with the idea of being the full-time Cubs DH.
Now, you asked about Seiya and the idea of him being unhappy DHing, and of course, Jed was asked about that.
Yeah, I mean, he was a great hitter for us the second half in that role, and I think he's a really productive hitter. So, I mean, I think that I'm excited he's a Cub.
I mean, when you look at his,
what does that mean? What can you run that through the decoder? What does that mean?
Well, happy that he's a Cub, and that's what he's going to be playing. He's going to be DHing.
Jed's happy. Is Jed's happy he's a Cub, or Seiya's happy to be a Cub?
Well, Seiya has a contract. So
can we listen? Can we listen to it again? Can we listen to that cut again? All right, let's replay that. Let's all use our list.
A great hitter for us the second half in that role, and I think he's a really productive hitter. So, I mean, I think that I'm excited he's a Cub.
I'm excited he's a Cub. Well, great. I hope. What are you going to say, Jed? What are you going to say? You're not excited that he's a Cub? How does Seiya Suzuki feel about this? This is where I'm worried about, Crawly. Am I making too much of it? Maybe I am. But I remember a guy, Seiya Suzuki, who missed probably season 1 of this podcast, missed about 6 weeks with a blister on his finger, right? With a blister on his finger. And that was when he was happy.
Well, I can just tell you right now that in the second half, when he was mainly a DH, he hit 300 in July, 287 in August, 329 in September. I think that, he played, he's the kind of hitter that you really want, to be honest with you. I think he can do it. He struggled in April and May, or in May and June. He hit well in April. So he had a little kind of lull in May and June, but I don't know. All I can tell you right now is he has a contract by the Chicago Cubs, and what is he going to do? Sit? He's not going to do that. So he's going to be where they want him.
I just okay. Okay. So, I don't know. When you hear that a guy's unhappy about DHing, you trade for a right fielder that you're not turning into a DH. Okay, Tucker's going to be your right fielder, right? No doubt about that. I don't like hearing guys are unhappy.
You know what? Dry your eyes with $100 bills from your contract. That's all I can tell you. I don't feel sorry for you.
Here's the problem is in baseball, Crawly, these contracts are guaranteed. So it's not like, it's not like other sports where you're always working for like that next contract, right? So, not to say that he's not working for the next contract, but if he wants to pout a little bit, he can pout a little bit.
That's fine, Dustin. He can pout, but the one thing he has to worry about is when that contract comes up. So you have 2 years of a contract.
It also worries me. Okay, it also worries me about what is this year's star Japanese player, and is Seiya going to badmouth the team and the organization? Is that going to happen? That's not going to make me feel real good. That's not going to sit well with me.
Well, Sazaki's mentor is Yu Darvish, who absolutely loves the Cubs, and so I'm not that concerned about it. If he wants to sit there and pout and do bad, then he's not going to get a good contract in 2 years. If I were him, I'd start playing better. If you want to play your way off the team, like you said, completely waive the no trade clause, and let's talk that route.
The problem now is I think that ship has sailed, right? Unless it's getting an unbelievable power pitcher or something for him.
Well, right now, we have the outfield we have, which is Happ, PCA, and Tucker, and you have the DH and Seiya Suzuki, and you can always kind of flip those guys around a little bit, Suzuki. And
what do you think that gets you, Crawly? What do you think that gets you? That grouping right there, that gets you a win in the Central?
You look at everything in totality, and so defense and run prevention is a big part of what the Cubs want to do. So having that outfield defense is phenomenal. But now
it's good defense. It's really good defense.
Really good defense. And Ian Happ had a really good offensive season last year. Obviously, Kyle Tucker's a guy that you look at. He was on pace for over 40 home runs. So it really kind of changes the outlook of things when you're adding 20 plus more home runs to right field. Yep. And I'm excited about it. Now, the question is infield. Now, when we talk about run prevention and infield, Jed was asked about where Michael Busch, if he could play third, something that, everybody's kind of kicked around.
We really see Michael as a Gold Glove first baseman, and that's our focus. Can he move around a little bit? Of course, his versatility is great, but he made real strides at first. I thought after the first month of the season, he was fantastic at first, and that's certainly how we're seeing him.
I agree 100%. I thought during April, I was like, I don't know. And then all of a sudden, every month, Michael Busch got better. And the Cubs haven't had a first baseman since Anthony Rizzo. I mean, that is literally ridiculous. So why would
he's a free agent still, right? Would you bring Anthony Rizzo back?
No, I'm not bringing – everyone's got to get off that boat. Anthony Rizzo's not coming back.
I just started that with you. All right. You're sensitive.
No. I've heard it 1,000 times. I've heard it 1,000 times. We need Rizzo back. No, you really don't. It was great while it lasted. People move on. Now, as far as Michael Busch, he's only played Dustin. He's only played 13 games, 99 and a third innings at third base. He had 4 errors in 13 games at third. That's not good. We saw what happened when we hope that someone can learn third base on the fly. Anyone remember Christopher Morel? And not only that, you don't want to sit there like you saw with Morel and hope that starts getting in his head and the offense start to go down. Michael Busch is again, he's young. He's not young, but he's 27 years old. He has a great bat. He hit a lot of home runs last year, and I think he's going to hit more after his first full season. And once he got established, I agree with Jed. He might be a Gold Glover. And let's say he is a Gold Glover. Could you potentially, Dustin, have 6 Gold Glovers on this team? 3 in the outfield and 3 in the infield?
I guess. I mean, could you? Yeah, yes, you could.
Yes,
now, how's Nico? Is everything pointing as far as we know? Nico ready for spring training, ready to get back out there?
That's what it all looks like. All signs point that direction. Now, who is going to play third, you ask? I heard you ask that now that Isaac Paredes is gone.
And I'm happy about that.
Here's Jed on the head.
Yeah, I think he can play second well. He can play third well. I think, right now, obviously, we're going to give him a long look at third after we traded Paredes. But I think, making room for young players is really important. I mean, he has to earn that job. I'm not going to gift him that job on a conference call in the middle of December. But, certainly with what he's done in the minor leagues since we've had him, he's played really well. He obviously played really well in the P12 after the season. And I think his arrow is really pointing up. And I do think it's important, just like we did last year with PCA. You've got to give young players some runway and some ability to play. And obviously, it's not always linear, as we talk about, but certainly you've got to give at bats to talented young players. And Matt has certainly put himself in position to be considered for something like that.
I love everything that he says there about the key. There is some runway, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Just like they gave PCA, right? Just like they gave PCA. Very similar, right? That's a similar thing.
Right. He's not the savior. He's not the one that needs to carry this team. He needs to be able to play a competent third base and learn how to hit MLB pitching.
Yeah, okay? Limit the errors, right? Limit the errors.
limit the errors and start to learn. And you saw what happened with PCA and Miguel Amaya, what they went through. And that's most likely what's going to happen with Matt Shaw. I've talked to plenty of people, and right now they say the gap between AAA and the majors is the highest it's ever been.
Right.
Okay.
I hear that a lot.
It's going to take some adjustment. Be patient. Let the kids work it out. And that's what it takes sometimes. I always remember Sandberg went like 0 for 34 and they were getting ready to demote him. Just be patient and see what you get. I'm not saying this because the next Brian Sandberg, but I'm saying is that people expect a guy to come out of here and shoot out of a cannon. I just don't think that's realistic right now. I think, and it doesn't have to be with this team. I think if he can play solid defense, he'll learn and he'll develop. And I'm not too worried. But what about a plan B, you're saying, Dustin? What about a plan B just in case?
Yeah, in general, in the infield, I think that's something we'll be looking at. I think that, obviously trying to, round out the rest of the team, make sure that we think about our different redundancies in different areas, try to make sure that we don't feel exposed at any one position is really important. So I think that might be an area we do look at.
All right, we talked about Ben Cowles is on the line on the 40-man, Miles Masterboni. I know you love that. Luis Vasquez, Gage Workman, couple guys. So we'll see what happens. I'm not going to worry about that. I want to see what Matt Shaw can do. So hopefully that's about it. Jed talked a little bit about looking for pitching. Of course, they're always looking for pitching. That's not going to be a big deal. But the question here that's asked about Jed is free agency or trade. What does he kind of see really percolating right now?
I mean, I can only speak for us. I think I said to you guys at the meetings that more of our discussions were on trades than free agency, and I think that's continued. But I can't speak for what other people are doing out there. That was the Cubs' focus.
And Dustin, when the Cubs came into this season, right? They had a whopping 8 prospects in the Cubs in baseball's top prospects, 100 prospects. You had Jefferson Rojas, 100, Cam Smith at 73, Kevin Alcantara, 67, Triantos, 55, Ballesteros, 44, Horton, 42, Casey, 34, and Matt Shaw, 22. So you're down to 6, but you still got 6. And so he was asked if any of the top 5 to 7 prospects could be in future deals.
I think everything is a one-off decision. Like, does this make us better now? What is this doing for the future? I think that's a constant balance. So I don't think you do one deal and say like that prohibits a bunch of other deals. I think, but everything is done in concert, and I think you have to figure all those things out and make that determination. But ultimately, the goal is to be a better team next year, but certainly the goal isn't to be only good next year. And I think that's always going to be a focus, that you're going to always have the present future balance. And I think that, that'll, now that we've made the Tucker deal, like that'll be a consideration in the future deals we do.
This is the Fly the W670 podcast. It is season 3, episode 102, the return of Sammy Sosa. Feel free to leave us a 5-star review. It's that time, Crawly. We're going to go around the bases, give you a little Cubs info and news from around MLB. Let's touch all them all.
Yep, I actually was listening last night to 670 The Score when insider Bruce Levine, Marquis 670 The Score, Odyssey. We love Bruce. And unfortunately, Dustin, there was a deal that was kind of potentially happening that doesn't look like it is happening anymore. And I got to say, I'm not 100% disappointed, but it was going to be a little exciting. This is what Bruce said last night on 670 The Score.
I put out the story during the last week that they were after Jesus Luzardo, a power pitcher with the Miami Marlins. That deal appears to be dead now, and we don't know what the reason is. It was very hot for a long period of time. Maybe the medicals on one side or the other wasn't good, but that doesn't appear to be happening right now. So they'll be shifting. They still need another starting pitcher in my mind, and they have plenty of starting pitching. There's just a redundancy of guys that throw 92 miles an hour. You'd love to see. Look, if I told you they did, Mr. Ricketts opened the purse strings up, and Corbin Burns, he said, go and give him $35 a year for the next 8 years. Would that make them the division champions? Would that make them World Series contenders? You know, a lot of people would say yes, right? But from the practical perspective right now, I think you're going to see them going after some bullpen arms. They definitely need to look at some of the guys like Kirby Yates, who's out there that can help at the back end and help close games. They need a left-hander. They've needed a left-hander in the bullpen for 2 years, okay? And they're going to go out there. There's a guy named Hobie Milner, who was with Milwaukee, that was non-tender. That was a pretty good-looking pitcher. Has been around a little bit, a veteran pitcher. They might be going after somebody like that. So, keep your eye on them. They're gonna stay busy. Is there a big deal? Is there a big free agent down the line? I really can't. I can't see a big free agent at this point.
All right, so he
changed his tune in about 8 hours, because earlier in the day he was saying that he saw a power arm coming to the Cubs. So now he's saying that he doesn't see a big move coming, and that disappoints me, because I want the Cubs to be spending the $20+ million in savings for shipping Bellinger out to the Yankees.
Well, okay, so this was a trade, and I was always a little bit on the fence. It was going to be high risk, high reward, right? Because Jesus Luzardo is what they need, and Bruce talked about it. The Cubs just have a glut of guys that can throw 92 to 93 miles an hour, no power arms. Jesus Luzardo is a power arm that they definitely need, but, he's got an injury history, Dustin, and we talked about this before.
Well, that's what some of the speculation is. Some of the speculation is that when they got to the final, dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and they looked at the medicals, that's when things got a little dicey.
Where are you on that? I know you didn't want.
I would not have traded. I would not have gotten rid of Owen Casey for him, but they could have had James Triantos. Sure.
That was the name. Those were the two names mentioned, and we talked about how.
But not Owen Casey. No way. No, I got to see him at Wrigley.
Right now, that's going to depend on Tucker and whether how he's going to.
All right, I'm just saying. I mean, I'm just saying. God forbid an injury, but I'm saying I don't want to see Owen Casey playing for somebody else and wearing an all-star cap or uniform for another team.
And I understand though that he's saying right now that as far as a free agent, no, and you're talking about spending money. When you look at the free agents out there. So here's the thing about Corbin Burns. He was on my wish list, right? He was on my wish list. But here's the thing. He declined a qualifying offer. So that means you lose draft picks. You lose international free agent money, which if you want Sasaki, that means if you get Corbin Burns, you're out in Sasaki, right? There's no chance because you don't have that international money anymore. So there's a qualifying offer attached to Burns. It's not going to happen. I don't think the Cubs are going to do anyone who got a qualifying offer. So that would be Burns, Nick Pivetta, or Sean Manaea. Once you kind of go down the list a little bit, Jack Flaherty, I've kept saying Walker Buehler and over again. That's a guy that for me, I think, again, I think there's a lot of high upside. I don't think he's going to get a big contract just because he is coming off Tommy John. But he's a guy that I think could really fit in well with this team. And so I'm keeping my fingers crossed. But other than that, Dustin, you don't want Max Scherzer. Clayton Kershaw's going to do his whole, he's going to do his Dodger thing. Maybe Patrick Sandoval, Charlie Morton's 41 years old. Justin Verlander. He had a 4.0 award last year, but he's 42. I'm just trying to figure out, as far as spending money, that's where you kind of start looking more at the free agent market. And we talked about this last time. That's where I'd like to see them put their money. To me, Tanner Scott is a guy that was number one on my top tier there, and Carlos Estevez was my number 2 tier. And so when you look at those guys, those are guys that I think, I know Jed doesn't like spending money on relievers, but bite the bullet this time and try to do, get somebody that we know that once that 9th inning comes, we don't have to worry about it. There's going to be, God, do you remember the ulcers that we got last year from Hector Neris?
How many one-run games was it?
Yeah, the one-run games, the Hector Neris, like every time even Hector Neris got a save, it was a guy on third that he, left down there with 1 out. It was an absolute disaster.
Heart attack Hector, Crawly. Heart attack Hector.
I just want to sit there and watch Craig Counsell give someone the ball in the ninth and just breathe easy and be like, okay, let's get the car started, get ready to go. 3 more outs, sing the song, fly the flag, and go home. That's all I want. Is that too much to ask for?
Nice. That would be nice. That would be nice. You just got Sammy Sosa back. One thing at a time, Crawly. One thing at a time.
You know who else is coming back? I didn't tell you this. John Lester is coming back to the Chicago Sports Spectacular.
Oh, wow. Finally,
Hasn't done an autographing.
You'll get that autograph you need, huh?
Yeah, he has not been signing since I think 2018 was his last one. So I'm going to buy a lotto ticket today. Actually, I need a lotto ticket. I'm at the car dealer and I just found out my brakes are no good. But that being said, Dustin, one guy that doesn't have to worry about paying for brakes, Cody Bellinger. He had his press conference in New York.
Nobody drives in New York, right? Nobody drives a car.
I thought he was pretty cool about everything. Respectful. He talked to Jed. He was honest. I really liked what he said about playing in Wrigley. And so this is what Cody Bellinger said to the New York press.
Yeah, I think the beautiful thing about Wrigley Field is the elements. You get the wind, you get the day games, and it was tough. I've never been a guy to make excuses. There were definitely good days to hit at Wrigley Field. There's days where the wind wasn't blowing or the wind was blowing out a little bit. I think that's part of the experience at Wrigley is the elements, and that's what makes it so unique.
So it's kind of interesting because he's saying, oh, Wrigley's unique. That's part of the fun of it. But he also mentioned his numbers were affected by the park factors last year. So maybe, like I said, I feel that playing in Yankee Stadium for Cody Bellinger is going to be one of those things. It's going to be a good fit for him. So,
if it doesn't work there, it's not going to work anywhere for him, right?
No. And it's just like Isaac Paredes going to Houston. It's like he's in the perfect stadium. Sometimes you're in the right stadium for where you need to be. I think both those guys are going to have that. But, Cody was really cool. And one thing he talked about was about Jed Hoyer's openness and honesty. And, that is something, whether you talk about Theo or Jed, that people have always said is those guys have really kind of usually been pretty straight up front with everybody. So, I think we've talked about Kyle Tucker hopefully falling in love with Wrigley. Boy, we really need him to fall in love with Wrigley and hopefully not $700 million. But I think that, like I said, I think Cody was a great guy. And I hope people understand, you can't have two different kinds of opposing views on things but still like I'm glad that Cody is gone. I'm glad that money's freed up. I think at the same time, I'm sad because I liked him as a player. He was a nice guy. His teammates loved him, but I think this is best for the team, the organization, and even I think it's the best for Cody Bellinger.
Yeah. And again, at the end of the day, that's what matters, but I was really hoping to see that lineup with those two guys in it.
Yeah, but again, we're going to talk on the next episode when we kind of start talking about roster configurations. I still think that there's exciting things to happen, and who knows if the Cubs are done making moves. I mean,
hopefully they're not done. Hopefully Bruce was wrong, and this is not the end of it.
I think they're still. I think they're definitely going to look over for pitching. I just think it's going to be through trade and not free agent. That's what I think. I think that there's still going to be moves made. There's still going to be bench moves made. I think your everyday players, as far as position players, I think that's done. I think we're pretty much on a lock on that. I think they might try to get a veteran third baseman just in case something happens. Not great with Matt Shaw, but I think what you see as far as your everyday lineup, we can really start playing around with penciling things around and seeing where things go.
So our friend Pat Hughes made another Hall of Fame, huh?
I mean, Pat Hughes, he's on a first off,
it's on a heater.
He's on a heater, and the thing about Pat, I was lucky enough to interview him for the Fly the W podcast a couple times. He's been on this podcast. And it's so funny because, first of all, he doesn't call me Crawly. He never calls me Crawly. He calls me Paul, which is my real name. And he'll be like, hello, Paul, you did a great job. And it's funny to get a compliment, but interviewing him, Dustin, is like the easiest thing. It's like,
very nice man. Very nice man. Very genuine, very nice.
You could just tell what kind of human being he is, but he's definitely a Hall of Famer. He's made it to the Cubs Hall of Fame recently. He's the Ford Frick Award winner in Cooperstown. Now this spring, 2025 Cactus League Hall of Fame, Pat Hughes is going to be inducted. So at some point in time, at some spring training game, they will do this induction. Trevor Hoffman is going to be inducted. Trevor Hoffman, Pat Hughes, obviously. And then Ron Pies is a former Cactus League president, and Mike Murphy is a retired San Francisco Giant clubhouse manager. This is really kind of a cool award because they recognize not just players and managers and announcers, but kind of the people that make up the Cactus League. And if you've never been out there, spring training's right around the corner, man. We're only talking about like a couple months away. But what an honor for Pat, and I'm just so happy, and we are so lucky to hear him on 670 The Score. I know we've said that a lot, but just a great guy. One other award that Cub fans may not have been aware of is the Cubs are having their organizational meetings right now, and so Edwards Guzman is the Chicago Cubs 2024 Stan Zielinski Scout of the Year Award winner. And Dustin, I got to be 100% honest. We always talk, what's Crawly's question going to be at Cubs convention?
Right.
And if you remember in 2020, obviously the pandemic screwed a lot of things up, but they cut a lot of scouts. And then if you saw this year, they're cutting more scouts again. And I guess my question, to Jed that I keep kind of going back to is, how do they value scouts or the role of scouts moving forward? And do they, I'm not 100% on board with.
Yeah, is it all data? Is it all data driven now? Right. The eye test is, throw the eye test out. It's all data driven.
Right. And that's my concern. I think we're at an era now, Dustin, where, we know the silly things that you used to say, oh, the guy walks funny. Oh, he does this. You're not going to sit there and not have guys because of that. You're going to look at metric and data, and you'd be dumb not to. But it's always that balance between using the metrics and talking to scouts who know what they're doing. And the Cubs have had some great scouts over the year, the greatest of them all being Buck O'Neill. But, I think that's my question that I really kind of feel like I'm kind of leaning towards. But, congrats to Edwards Guzman and those scouts. They do great things. And the Cubs, scouting and development and drafting has been so good. It allows you to get players like Kyle Tucker. It allows you to have a farm system with 7 top 100 MLB prospects. That's what you do. So don't forget the human element of the game in that regard. These scouts do a great job, and I'm glad to see the honors being bestowed still.
Absolutely. Well, Crawly, that's a wrap. Don't forget to listen, download, review, and subscribe to the Fly the W podcast. Follow on all the socials. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. Of course, we're on Twitter. FlyTheW670@gmail.com. That's how you can email Crawly and I, and you can watch us by subscribing to the 670 The Score YouTube channel. Crawly, great news. Sammy Sosa and the Cubs make up. He'll be at CubsCon.
I'm happy. I'm tapping my heart. I'm blowing some kisses for Sammy. I hope all of the Northside fans are going to be at the Sheridan, and we'll be there cheering, "Go Cubs!" Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!